Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Jonathan Friedland, normally writing for The Guardian, also a little bit for the Jewish Chronicle, and generally being around the place. And welcome. It's very good to be with you all for what could not be a more important conversation. We are launching tonight the Environmental Audit, which is launching a tool by which synagogues can measure their own environmental efficiency and make the changes that will make them better environmental citizens. It's a joint initiative, this one, between the EcoSynagogue group and the Board of Deputies of British Jews, and I'm delighted to lend my voice to the effort underway. I mentioned at the top my affiliation with The Guardian. I think it's worth mentioning that we changed our own style guide in the last couple of years, maybe a bit more. We'd previously referred to global warming and climate change and decided, partly in dialogue with our readers, that these terms didn't really capture the urgency and gravity of the challenge before us. And so we now refer routinely to the climate crisis and indeed the climate emergency. And I think those terms are very justified. Just today, Bill Gates himself gave what really was sort of advice and a warning, saying that dealing with COVID and the global pandemic is going to look, in his words, very, very easy by comparison with taking on the challenge of the climate crisis. It is even bigger, in other words, than the crisis which has gripped the whole planet for the last year. And he used Bill Gates, two very useful numbers. One of those numbers was 51 billion, and the other number was 0. And 51 billion, of course, as you all know, refers to the number of tons of greenhouse gases that are added to the atmosphere every single year. And 0, of course, net zero, the aim to reduce the addition to those to the gases in the atmosphere to 0. So that is the scale of the challenge. I think it's, in a way, for very understandable reasons, for the last year, it has struggled to get the attention that it needs to. And I'm hoping that now tonight is part of a move towards getting, out of the mindset of the last year when we really, in some ways, only had the bandwidth for one thing, the pandemic, and instead to open our eyes to this, in Bill Gates's words, even bigger crisis. It's my view, and that's why I'm here tonight and delighted to be so, that the Jewish voice needs to be heard in tackling and addressing this. It's almost become a cliche of Jewish social justice conversations to use the phrase tikkun olam. I suspect there will be plenty of speakers who have that phrase lined up as part of their remarks. It is the notion of repairing the world is a very powerful Jewish phrase, very evocative of our responsibilities and our duty. But in this case, when it comes to the climate crisis, it is very literal. It is literally apt, because the challenge is that the world does indeed need repair. It needs healing and repair. So tikkun olam is not just metaphorical. In this case, it seems to me an actual direct imperative, and therefore clearly Jews have to make their voice heard. Tikkun olam is in the singular. There is only one olam. There is only one planet. We only have one, and it needs repair. In the last few years, the Jewish community in Britain, I think it's fair to say, has looked fairly inward. The last 5 or 6 years, since 2015 or so, for very specific and I think fair and good reasons. But I think and hope that time has now passed, that we don't just look after ourselves and our own immediate needs, which it's very clear and understandable why we need to do that, but instead that we need to look outward. I mentioned before, this is a joint initiative of EcoSynagogue and the Board of Deputies of British Jews. Why don't we just, before I close out this introduction, just hear the words of the President of the Board of Deputies, Marie van der Zaal, with a comment from her, which I think is useful. There it is. The Board of Deputies and EcoSynagogue have worked together to create a pathway for our synagogues to improve our relationship with the world around us. Please join and start your journey. So there's the words of the president of the Board of Deputies, in effect, the directly elected leader or lay leader of Anglo Jewry, lending her weight and the board's weight to this cause. As I say, the Jewish voice has a singular contribution to make. I defer very much to the rabbis we're going to hear from, who will know 1,000 times more than I ever could about the Jewish teaching on the environment, the notions of jubilee and resting the land, of custodianship. I look to them to guide us as to why there is a particular Jewish contribution to this essential cause. But what is clearly needed is leadership and a sort of structure, a way for people to play a role. And luckily, the Jewish community have both of those things. And that's why it's so good and apt that this isn't just the Board of Deputies, it's also EcoSynagogue, because we have a ready-made structure in the Jewish community. We do have synagogues which are ready-made mechanisms for activism and for environmental energy. And what I mean by that is you have their moral leadership from our rabbis, but we also have structures that do enable people to do good and to take part. And that is, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We do not need to start from scratch with dozens more new organizations. We have them in the form of our synagogues. So it's a very good fit. The EcoSynagogue, the Board of Deputies, the whole Jewish community responding to the environmental emergency, the climate crisis, with this new environmental audit and launching the tool by which synagogues can do their bit. I'm going to say a few closing words at the end, but from now on, I really want to hand over to those people who are leading on this. And let's start off with the rabbi of Muswell Hill Synagogue, a man I admire and like very much, Rabbi David Mason.
Jonathan, thank you so much for those words of support, a call to action really to all of us, and really, really critical and inspiring words. And yeah, we are all responsible for the planet on which we live. This is a universal value, but it's also responsibility, a Jewish value. We are told that all Israel are responsible for one another. But this can extend to our relationship to the world around. We all need to be responsible for the other, considering how it would be to stand in their place and what they would need. So listen to these words of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai on the responsibility. He taught that it can be compared to people on a boat. One took out a drill and began drilling a hole in the boat beneath his seat. The others said to him, "What are you doing?" He replied, "Is that any concern of yours? I am not drilling a hole beneath your seat. I'm drilling a hole beneath mine." They said, "But you will sink the whole ship and we will all drown." When it comes to the environment, we cannot disconnect our actions from the greater picture. We cannot say, I may be using plastics or wasting food or using inefficient energy, but that surely can't have an effect on the bigger picture out there. Of course, it may be a small amount, but the value here is of responsibility. If none of us change our attitude to the environment, then many of us who live on this planet, including many in our own country, will suffer as a result, and maybe are suffering already. So let us take responsibility together. EcoSynagogue offers us all in synagogues across the country a platform for that very responsibility. In Ethics of the Fathers, we are taught the work is not there to be completed, but neither are we free to desist from it. That is our message to you all today. The work we want to, here at EcoSynagogue, support you in cannot be accomplished in one go. But at the same time, we cannot we must not feel free from the challenge. And I'd now like to introduce to you Hodaya Mason, one of our young members who will reflect on those thoughts.
Thank you. I think the main message that I took from this is the feeling of responsibility to one another. Unfortunately, in this society, we tend to get wrapped up in our own little worlds, but we find it hard to see the bigger picture. But what we have seen in this pandemic is that little things that we do can make a massive impact. Just by staying at home, we've not only saved our own lives, but the livelihoods of others. Same goes for the climate. If we as British Jewry can pull together, we won't only make an impact on our own community, but on society as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Hodaya, for those really, really wonderful words. And I can say also that the Chief Rabbi has kindly given his such important support to our project, EcoSynagogue. And we're going to see now some words that we can look at from our Chief Rabbi.
Hello, I'm Rabbi Mark Goldsmith, and I'm Senior Rabbi at Edgware and Hendon Reformed Synagogue here in London. And I'm going to begin with a midrash, an explanatory interpretation of the Torah from 2,000 years ago, which pictures God showing Adam around the Garden of Eden and saying to him, "Look at my works. See how beautiful they are, how excellent. For your sake, I created them all. See to it that you do not spoil and destroy my world, for if you do, there'll be no one else to repair it." And it's a beautiful evocation of the human responsibility to protect our planet. And it's very notable that it's Adam who's being shown around. Adam is the prototype for all humanity, for all faiths, and for people with no faith community. For EcoSynagogue to be effective, we need to be in partnership with everyone who cares about the world and our environment. So thank goodness that already Eco Church, the organization which inspired us, Eco Mosque and Eco Sikh bring this imperative to their tradition in their own way. Faith communities need to be environmental exemplars and to inspire their grassroots. There can be no national nor religious borders in climate change activism, in cutting the carbon that the world has somehow to absorb, in reducing our wastage of resources. Another midrash has Abraham, the founder with Sarah of Judaism, compared to a man who was traveling from place to place and saw a building in flames. And he asks, is it possible that the building lacks a person to look after it? The owner of the building looked out and said, I'm the owner of the building. So Abraham said, is it conceivable that the world is without a guide? The Holy One of Blessing looked out and said to him, I'm the guide, the sovereign of the universe. You will need to be my hands. This is a call to Abraham and we Jews, his spiritual descendants, to put out the flames of that burning house. There is a Jewish duty to preserve the environment, to keep the world livable for all creation, and to act now as anyone would if they recognize their house as burning. And that's what EcoSynagogue is built to help Jewish communities through our environmental audit and the action you can take afterwards to begin to do. It's my pleasure now to introduce Gideon Futterman. And Gideon is an environmental activist and climate change activist and a member of our Edgware and Hendon Reformed Synagogue and a teacher.
The climate crisis is here already, affecting millions of people across the world right now, and it's only getting worse. It threatens so much of the progress that modern society has made, threatening the strides in health, well-being, peace, security that we've all grown to accept as normal, secure, and good. I want to be able to view my future as a promised land of life getting better, of hope, that my life can be better than those that came before, and those who come after me can be better than mine. The climate crisis threatens all that progress, all that hope. It threatens to make the future exactly the opposite of what it should be. Make it less secure, less peaceful, less prosperous, less healthy than today. That's why it's our responsibility as Jews and as people to combat this crisis with urgency, intelligence, and care. The call is no longer for us to be a unique light among the nations, because to combat an issue of this magnitude, everyone has to be a light. Combating the climate crisis means a transformation of every sector of the economy and society. So if we want a brighter future, we need leadership from every area of life. We need leadership from all of us.
Thank you so much, Gideon. Thank you for being a light together with Hodaya and the other young people we're going to hear from tonight. Rabbi Celia Sergey, who is the chair of our Assembly of Reformed Rabbis and Cantors, also on behalf of all of Reformed Judaism, lends her support to what we're doing with EcoSynagogue.
On a recent panel, Finally Enough on Climate Change, Rabbi Jonathan Wittenberg remarked to our colleagues that a panel on climate change does not get as many people attending it as a panel on anti-Semitism. Though without the life on our planet, there would be no anti-Semitism. I think there is some similarity between the processes of eco-deterioration and genocide. Both processes start slowly at first, with a few but increasing changes, which people notice but hope they won't get worse or will go away until it is too late to do something about it. One of the challenges of ecosystem deterioration is that it involves all of us, each one of almost 8 billion individuals living on our planet. Each of us chooses our own level of engagement with sustainable living. However, as the Midrash Leviticus Rabbah that Rabbi David quoted this evening teaches us, unless we all keep our ship safe, we might not get to our destination or enjoy our journey. All it takes is one person, or one community, or one country drilling a hole under their seat to bring their ship down. So we can't say that someone else is taking care of the environment and doing the right thing, but I don't have to, because we are all together sailing in the same ship. One of my favorite parts of being a member of the EcoSynagogue steering group, that we don't focus on each other's theological differences or differences in liturgy, but we talk about making our communities eco-friendly and pursuing the dream of passing this beautiful world on to our children. We are united by our ambition to make our synagogue and communities environmentally sustainable places of joy and peace. EcoSynagogue Steering Group is an example and a model of how different denominations of our Jewish community can come together and make a much greater impact together with our movements than on our own. The Talmud story talks about a man planting carob tree for future generations because he found himself surrounded by carob trees, which his ancestors planted for him. Not one ancestor, but many ancestors. So each of us today can see this Eco-Audit relaunch as our opportunity to plant those seeds of future carob trees through making a commitment to live an eco-life as individuals and as a community. The only way to achieve this vision is by doing it together. And I would like to introduce to you a young adult member of Nottingham Liberal Synagogue, Artash Kuduk.
Thank you. So you can be the most blissful member of our world. You can have no emissions, you can be a vegan, you can cycle to synagogue, or for your neighbor to get in his big diesel truck, drive over to the airport, get in his private jet, fly over to the Amazon rainforest and chop down some rainforest for his cattle farm. Now that is a big hole in the ship that is our world. And although we can fix little holes, big holes like that will inevitably sink the ship. So that's why projects like this, EcoSynagogues, are crucial for us to unite and to not only stop making big holes in our ship, but to also repair old holes that we've made all together. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. And I'm delighted to introduce you to the words of support from the CEO of Liberal Judaism, Rabbi Charlie Baginski.
Good evening. I'm Rabbi Jonathan Wittenberg, Senior Rabbi of Masorti Judaism, and I'm moved to tears by being here now because I've been passionate about EcoSynagogue from the start. My theme is our responsibility for the future, and here's one of the trees. It's a beech tree, not a carob, that following the midrash that Rabbi Tanya taught, I want to plant. The midrash there concludes, I found the world full of trees, so I'm planting for my children and for the future. Judaism teaches, V'shinantam levanecha, teach them to your children. But if there isn't a world which is livable for our children, there'll be no Torah to teach. When my children were young, I used to drive them to the middle of the forest and then close everything down when it was dark and just say, look, listen. And we were filled with wonder. I would call it the presence of God. I want to pass on to my children, not a world ruined, but a world as beautiful, more beautiful, and a life of hope, as Gideon so eloquently said earlier on, and not just for my children, but for all children. And yet I know in a way that many would consider that a luxury, because there are so many people in so many parts of the world whose ancestral lands where they made a living are subject to drought and flood and have become uninhabitable. So it's a matter of future, and it's a matter of climate justice as well. I helped found EcoSynagogue to be a planter for the future, not a destroyer of the future. And this is something, as Rabbi Tanya said, we all share. It's a personal responsibility to be a partner in the Midrashic words with God in creation. It's a moral responsibility to do justice and not live off, but live with our fellow human beings and creatures. And it's a spiritual responsibility to share the wonder of God's world. Hans Jonas, the German Jewish moral philosopher, gave a lecture days before, in fact, he died. It was expected that he would talk about racism because his mother had perished at Auschwitz. He didn't. He said there's something greater than that, something that make our differences look petty. He said it's the outcry of mute things. And if we don't hear it and change our attitude to creation, there won't be a future. We're here to help us guide the way to a future. And we need to heed that outcry of mute things. I'm glad to introduce you and to welcome you to Jodie Kaufman, member of the New North London Synagogue and a passionate advocate and worker for the environment.
Thank you. As a young person who hopes to have children and grandchildren one day, I'm extremely passionate about making sure we do everything we can to protect the environment. It is amazing that the collective effort of so many people can have such a profound positive impact on the planet. But we need to act now, and this is a really urgent challenge that we face. It is so important that people from every generation are active in raising awareness and creating change. And it has been especially amazing to see so many young people trying to make a difference within their schools and local communities. When I was younger, climate change wasn't widely talked about. But I am so pleased that it is now a passion of so many young people and adults too. The challenge now is to enable our local changes to ripple out into wider society and to keep up this momentum, especially in light of the other challenges the world faces. To echo Rabbi Jonathan, we live on such a beautiful planet, and enabling future generations to live safely and happily is of utmost importance.
Thank you, Jody. You've been very much part of my and my synagogue's inspiration, and now we're taking this work into a systematic level to work together. I'm delighted that we have the support of Dr. Matt Plen, the CEO of Masorti Judaism, and here are some words of his.
And now in the next short video, you will see everything that you and your community need for your eco journey, for the journey of your community's environmental efficiency on our website.
Workshops will be available once a month. Resources and guidance has been continuously added. And you can contact our project manager, Andrea, for more support.
Every shul is different, so if a question doesn't fit your shul, be in touch so that we can help you.
This is a journey, so don't feel you have to fill out the whole form or do everything at once. Take it bit by bit. You can update, you can save what you've done, you can move along the path and edit, and then, of course, apply for your award.
Well, thank you everyone for that. I hope you've been as inspired by it all as I have. Something quite rare, I think, for our community. We've seen all the streams, all the major streams of religious Jewish life represented tonight, rabbis from every stream and strand, but also generationally, you have seen young and slightly less young from each community, hand in hand, working on this together. I think it's been a very inspiring start, and it is very much a start because this is a new initiative launched today, and I think it's just a new beginning, but a positive one. And thanks very much for being part of it. A final word, I think, from Rabbi Jonathan Wittenberg.
Thank you, Jonathan. I want to thank you, Jonathan Friedland, on all our behalf, and stress what you said, that this is a beginning, a very shared and important beginning, and we're here to help each other travel on the journey. A thank you to everybody who is participating and who will, we hope, participate soon. We want to take the whole of our community together with us.